Okay, nice. Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Sones, and I have Olinka here today, and we will be covering the second part of the series, creating and scheduling tests in ATF. If you haven't checked out the first few series, getting started in ATF, I do recommend to check that out. But we'll start with a little bit of introductions before diving in. So my name is Amanda Sones, and I am a technical consultant under Impact. And what I do, we work under Impact and we provide these services to customers just to kind of help them get enabled in any products of interest. And then, Olinka, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. Nice to meet you again. So I'm Olin Kelgini. I'm the senior outbound product manager for ALM and everything on the ATF. So you can always reach out to me if you need help.
Nice. So I will get into the agenda, but we'll just this quick safe harbor slide before moving forward. And then as for today's agenda, we will be covering new updates as far as ATF, so everything in the Washington release. So we'll be covering using ATF test steps, test creations, how to schedule your test, and then we will move on to the demo and show you kind of where to find and navigate to these in your instance. Okay. So as far as ATF, it has something called the test steps. These are the pretty much the building blocks to your ATF test because it's specifically the actions that will need to be executed in order for ATF to kind of know what to do. So for example, when you're impersonating a user, if you want to click some type of button and so on, these are all called test steps. And what ServiceNow has done is they have created a very long list of something that we call step configurations. So you don't really need to script any of these actions that you would like to execute. It's very simple as selecting which action that you need and dragging that onto your ATF test. And the entire goal is that it allows you to stimulate user actions and interactions within the application so that when you are testing, it can help you to identify any issues when you're, for example, developing or before and after upgrades, just because there's some changes made there. A lot of these steps, they can take in some input as well as return output. So for example, if you want to fill out a form, that would be an example of one of the steps. It can take in some input called variables. So how exactly would you like to fill out these fields? And for example, you can also use some of those inputs as outputs just to help your test kind of be a little bit more dynamic and not really static. As far as the out-of-box test steps that we do have, this is a long list of all of those test steps. So they're divided up into some of these categories, and then within each of those categories, you're able to kind of see what the available test steps are. And you're also able to filter that as well to kind of look through something more specific. Um, in addition to that, if there is some type of functionality that you don't necessarily see here, you do also have the option to create your own custom test step. One thing to keep in mind is that that does require some scripting experience, but when you do kind of navigate to that module to create your own test steps, there is some example code that is scripted out, so you don't necessarily need to worry about if you're completely on your own when it comes to building that custom test step. There's some examples on how to kind of capture that input variables, log the status and things of that sort. So I do recommend take advantage of the custom code commented out and also take advantage of the out of box code that's already here because you are able to use this as inspiration if you need to build some type of custom functionality. As far as the different test creation methods, so before you do get into building your actual test, it is important to kind of consult the developers, whoever built the customizations, and also your users, just because you do need to know what types of actions to execute and as well as what type of things to test. We do recommend testing just customizations or configuration changes in your instance. There isn't really a need to test anything out of the box that you didn't change because that's something that ServiceNow will already test for you with these major releases. So you don't need to necessarily test anything out of the box. With that in mind, here are the three different methods that you can go about when creating your test. So we have the first one here, manual test or manually add your test steps. So this one, it is a little bit more on the time consuming side in the initial phase. And this is because you kind of have to map everything out from start to finish. And essentially you'll be creating those tests from scratch. So this will be a little bit time consuming on the front end, but once you do have those tests built out, they're there for you to reuse, use as templates, and rerun. So again, a big curve in the beginning, but it's very easy to run your tests once everything's created if you do decide to go the manual route. We also have modify quick start test. This one is a lot quicker than manually creating every test, and I do recommend kind of looking for this before you decide you want to create a manual test. And this is because a lot of the steps are already pre-configured for you, and the only thing that you need to do is replace the demo data with your actual instance data in order for the test to pass. And there's also a lot of use cases here as well. So this just saves you the time from having to figure out what types of things to test because we're able to take a look at this. And then the last one, this is the quickest method and also one of the newer functionalities to ATF as of the Tokyo release, and this is using test generator. So we will cover this in more detail in one of the later steps or later videos in this series, but essentially what this does is it uses AI and also analyzes your instance behavior, workflows to generate tests for you. There is some limitations on what types of tests that this can build. It can only build, as of now, form and service catalog test. So anything outside of form or service catalog tests, you will have to kind of resort to some of these other methods, like using quick start test. This does extend the functionality of that, or manually making your tests if you're not able to find anything pre-built and predefined for you. And the last slide before we step into the demo is more on scheduling those tests. So you do have the option to schedule those tests. And this is really nice because you can have them regularly scheduled on a certain cadence. You can do things like daily, weekly, or for example, let's say you do your upgrades kind of outside of business hours and you want to run them at, let's say, 2 or 3 a.m. and have that upgrade and test results ready for you by the time you log on for work that day. You're able to do so here. So with this schedules, you're able to add any type of test or suite. There is not a limitation to this, but keep in mind, depending on if you're running your test at the cloud or using the client test runner, keep in mind kind of the time that it takes to test. If you are using the client test runner, for example, make sure you do have a browser that can stay open for throughout the duration of this test run in order for it to successfully execute. Okay, that is all I have. So we'll kick it over to the demo.
Hey, all right. So I'm going to share my screen now so we can walk through the various ways you can create a test or schedule a test. Now, I think the first one I'm going to go through that one that talked about is manually adding your test steps. So now I'm going to navigate to, I already have ATF as one of my favorites in my instance. This is a live demo, so where you get to experience is what happens in real life. For some reason, this is more refreshing. Okay, so I'm going to walk straight to or navigate straight to tests. Then from here we can see the test that is on my instance within the global package. So for the first steps, the first thing to do is go to the new, the top right corner. While you're there, you can write the name of your test. Let's say, for example, we'll call this one walkthrough series test. And all these are checked on by default. Active means that you can actually use this test or run this test when you want. Then fail on server error, this is also a default option to check. If you want to enable parameterized testing, we're going to talk about this later in the series. Then you can also insert a description. We always advise our customers to always add a description so it helps their team members understand what this test is all about. So this is simple enough because I just want to go over this. And once you're done with creating the test name and adding the description, the main step for this test creation method is to go to add test steps. So here is where you see all the test step Amanda was talking about earlier. I think she mentioned one where let's say for example you want to um create maybe a scripted test step on your own. That's one of the most difficult, but let's go there first. I won't do that now. I'll just show you how to get the test steps. So I'll just go to custom. Custom. Okay. So, okay, yeah, this particular one, this is the test step where if you have a particular script you want to insert to create your own custom step configuration, this is where you come to. Well, let's go to the simple one. So for example, we want to create a new user. I want to click on this next. So like Amanda said, some of these steps allow you to insert variable and also output the variable as you may like. So here, the first one is we're going to use this notes to insert whatever description we write. Create a new user. You can always, you don't have to do this. This is just trying to check all the boxes. Let's say the user on create is, let's say Dave. At least I like using Dave every time. And I use Dave Ramsey. The field, say for example, we need the field. It depends. Let's say we want to add email address or phone number. Okay, let's do phone number. We can always add this. And you can also set the roles. Let's say you want to give it a role. Let's try and use the ATF test designer. Let's pick this role. You can also group the user as you like. I don't know what group to use right now. I'll try and do admin. Okay, let's leave that. We can leave that for now. Also, with this create a new user, you also get a checkbox that tells you, okay, do you want to impersonate this user? So this impersonation is what sends out the first name and the last name variable to the next test step. So I'm going to submit this, and it will appear here as our first test step within this test. Then I'm going to do a second test step that takes in the output of this first one. Let's say, for example, I want to insert a record. And for me to insert a record, I need a user to insert a record. Okay, so execution order is number 2. It means it's going to come next after the first one we created, the create a new user. So this takes the variable we created. Oh no, sorry. I mean choose field. Oh, 19. So here, with this choose field, it picks the user we created earlier. And let's say, for example, you want to add I don't know, add cost center or something like that. You could add a name or a number 90176 and submit. So the whole point of this particular step is that it takes in the user you created in the first test step and uses it for the next one, which is the record insert. So this is the first method of creating test or creating the test within ATF. With this, you can copy the test, you can run the test the way you like, but right now the tests are not complete. So for you to run the test, you need to have a complete test step for the scenario you want to test within your within ATF. And also this tab, also you can see this tab brings up the test results. Once you're done running the test, you can come to this tab and analyze what happened within your test, if your test was successful or not, and what the issue within your test was something like that. And you can also add breakpoint. Breakpoint means like you want to debug your test and you want to basically understand what the output of each steps are actually producing, basically. So I'm gonna move on to the next method of creating a test within ATF, which is the quick start test. Now, like Amanda also mentioned earlier, this test the templates that come with ATF within ServiceNow. So the whole point is that we're trying to help you get started, like get something to work with when you get your instance or when you're trying to start using ATF. This ensures that you have no friction or less friction in using ATF or understanding ATF. I think one thing also I didn't mention also is that aside from adding test step here, you can also add test template that has been created already. From here, I think we have something called test template, and within test templates, these are different kind of tests or different kind of test steps that have been modified to actually help you perform or do your test better on ATF. So with this test template, you can also add tests within your test. So I'll go to quick start test now. And what you can see from quick start test is that you see, within the active column, you see that all the tests are false, and this is because we don't expect you to run them directly. The whole point of quick start test is you can copy them and run them the way you like, how you want. So let's say we want to work with this first one, assessment core. And within the assessment core, you can see that this test already comes with 4 tests already. And within this test itself, there are test steps within there. This helps you like get started. Like this helps you remove the major burden of manually creating your own test yourself. So go back. Within this test suite, you get 4 additional tests that are within the test suite. And what we usually advise our customers is to copy the test before they try to use it. So when you copy this test, you can then modify it the way you want. Click it. I've clicked on copy right now. So copying makes me have like a local copy of my instance, which I can modify. Now this is the one, and you see it's active right now, which means we can actually use them. And let's say, for example, also you have some tests you've created that are within this application or that also within this assessment core. You can add filter condition to bring in more testing. Like with this, you can say you want to search for tests with keywords that start with assessment. So with this, it will add all the tests that has assessment within them here in the test sheet. Let's close that for now. So once you're done copying, you can come to the test and modify them the way you want. Like Amanda said, the data you have in the test sheets are usually demo data. So we expect that you modify them to your own to the data you want or your own choice, the way you want it. So once you're done modifying, you can always update. So you ensure that your updates are saved or your changes are saved. Then you can run them when you are putting to when you want to. And the next one I'm going to talk about is how to create tests with test generator. We're going to go into more detail later within the series, but I just want to show you what is expected when it comes to running this test. Sorry. And so the last method, the last test creation method, like I mentioned earlier, is what we call the test generator. And with this saves you like all the stress of trying to create your test yourself. So just one thing to note is that for now the test generator is limited to service catalogs and what's the next one? Is it
And form test.
And forms, yeah, and form test. So right now we are limiting this test generator to that. Later, once we have more functionality, we're going to let you guys know. But this is what you have: form tests and service catalogs. So for example, let's say you want to service catalogs, you can specify a scope or just decide to go without the scope. Specific catalog items. Let's say Apple iPad trade is what we're interested in. We could say we want 100 tests and maximum test count per item. Can leave it at that. But one thing that's very important here is to also add your email. So we would do Dave Ramsey at ServiceNow. So once you have all this figured, once you have all this imputed, you can just go to submit. Right now, I didn't configure my instance for this, so that's why the submit button is not working. So that's all about test generator. I think the next one I'm supposed to talk about is how to schedule tests in ATF. This is just simple and straightforward. So for scheduling tests in ATF, there is a button for it's also on the nav bar. You go to schedule, and you can either modify the. This is one I have already, so let's go to a new one. And I'll just call this my new walkthrough schedule. And this I can decide to say I want to run this test every week, always on Fridays at this time. I'm gonna save. Then the next thing is to now add the test suits I want to schedule, the test I want to run at those times. You can also use this place to specify the browser you want to work on, and the OS you can decide to specify that also. So here I'm going to search for the tests. Or I could just I'll just look for assessment. We have that assessment code, the one we copied. Then submit. Submitting this button ensures that helps you see, okay, you're done editing the schedule suit, and this is when you want it to run. And I think one other thing also is if you later on decide to, let's say you want to modify or change when the test should run, you can always go back to your suit schedule and edit the date or edit the name. So Amanda, is there anything you want to add to all this?
This was pretty much it. The only thing I already mentioned this in the slides, but with the schedules, there isn't a limit, but just keep in mind how long everything is going to take to run. If you do add, like for example, 100 tests, you need to make sure that either using the cloud runner so all of those can run, or you have a client test runner that's able to stay open for the right amount of time to execute all of the tests.
Okay, yeah, all right. So I think we have a couple of best practices on this on the deck, so we'll just run over that.
Yep. So I will share my screen and end with those best practices. Okay, so the first one we have be aware of dependencies between the tests and the suites. So this is more for, like we kind of mentioned earlier, some of those variables can store some output. So you do need to make sure if you are using the suites, you kind of have everything, especially if it's something is dependent, you have the right execution order set out, or you will get some of those failures in that test suite run. As far as the next one, before using quick start suites, ensure that the necessary plugins are installed. So like we mentioned, I think in the first video, all of the quick start tests are dependent on applications. So the ones that you already see in your instance, it's because you have the necessary applications installed, but you do have the option to go to the store and install any other quick start tests that might best fit your needs. But in order for those to properly run, you do need to either make sure the right applications are installed, or if you want to kind of use it for something else, just make sure that you kind of reflect that. We put your actual instance data in the test for it to successfully pass. Next one, document any specific configurations. So this is really big. You want to make sure that you're consulting the developers because they are the ones who are making the customization, and you need to know exactly what was changed so that you can properly test those using ATF. Next one, the next two are kind of related, but this is more on quick start tests. We do recommend to copy them. And as you may have already seen, when you do open up those quick start tests, they all have protection policies on them. And this is because for updates for major releases, we are making updates to those quick start tests. So we want to make sure that you receive those updates. And that's why we recommend kind of just copy those and don't modify the original quick start test. Because when you do upgrade, for example, you do have that option to revert back to base system, and so that you're able to kind of see the new updates that were added to the quick start test. All right, but that is the last slide. Are there any other best practices you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think that's all for now.
Okay, nice. That is everything we have.
All right, so thanks guys for joining or for watching this. We're going to provide more content that would help you better use ATF and also have the best time to value when it comes to using ATF.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone.